She was just doing her job, quietly, carefully, without bothering anyone. A single mother working late hours to give her child a better life. But one night, everything changed. The person she trusted most, the one who signed her paychecks, decided to test her in the cruelest way imaginable. He thought it was just a game. But what unfolded that night revealed not only his prejudice, but the painful reality so many still face in silence. What did he see? And why did it leave him? Frozen in shame? By day, Angela was invisible to the world. She moved quietly through the halls of her employer's mansion, polishing the glass that already sparkled, folding clothes that weren't even worn, cooking meals she would never taste. To her, this wasn't just work. It was survival. Every paycheck meant food on the table, rent paid on time, and a little extra for her son's school books. Her routine was simple: rise before the sun, leave her child with a neighbor, and step into a house that wasn't hers but depended on her presence. She smiled politely, spoke only when spoken to, and carried the weight of dignity in silence. For years, Angela believed if she worked hard enough, stayed humble enough, she'd be safe, respected, protected. But she didn't know she was being watched, not with appreciation, not with gratitude, but with suspicion. Her employer, a man, who had everything, felt compelled to test the woman who had nothing. On the surface, it looked like another ordinary evening. Angela sweeping the floor, humming softly to herself. Yet behind closed doors, a plan was unfolding. One that would shatter the fragile trust she thought she had earned and force her to confront a truth she had always feared. Angela thought it was just another night. She tucked her hair back, wiped, her hands on her apron, and carefully placed the last dish into the sink. Her body ached, but her mind was already drifting home, to her son, to the warm hug waiting for her after another long shift. What she didn't know was that upstairs, her employer was setting the stage for something cruel. The billionaire reclined in his bed, pretending to sleep, his phone angled just enough to capture what was about to happen. He told himself it was harmless curiosity. But beneath that excuse lay something darker, suspicion born not of reason, but of prejudice. Angela entered the room quietly, as she always did, to turn down the sheets and tidy the space. She moved with care, respectful of his privacy, respectful of her place. But the moment she stepped closer, she felt it, the strange heaviness in the air, the way the silence seemed to cling to her skin. She didn't know she was being tested, watched like a thief in the night. And then it began. The man cracked his eye open just slightly, enough to watch her every move. Angela smoothed the sheets, picked up a book from the floor, and placed it gently on the nightstand. Her actions were ordinary, kind even. But in his mind, every motion was evidence, every glance was suspicion. Minutes passed. The silence deepened. Angela's heart began to race for reasons she couldn't explain. Something was wrong. She could feel it. Why did the room feel so heavy? Why did she suddenly feel as though the walls themselves were closing in? Then, just as she turned to leave, he shifted suddenly, as if startled from a dream. Angela froze, her breath caught in her throat. Had she done something wrong? Had she crossed some invisible line? Wait. His voice cut the silence, sharp, suspicious. What were you doing just now? Her stomach dropped. The question was loaded, a trap disguised as curiosity. She stammered, trying to explain that she was only tidying, only working. But the doubt in his eyes was louder than her words. He didn't see her years of loyalty, her sacrifices, her devotion. All he saw was his own prejudice reflected back at him. Angela's palms began to sweat, her mind racing. She had done nothing wrong, nothing, and yet in that room under his gaze, she felt as though she was already guilty. What would he do next? Would he believe her? Or would this test cost her everything she had built? The answer was coming, and it would be more devastating than she could ever imagine. Angela's voice shook as she tried to explain. I was only cleaning, just making sure everything was in its place. But the billionaire's eyes burned with suspicion. His lips curled into something between a smirk and a sneer, as though he had caught her in some hidden crime. He stood, towering over her. Don't lie to me. I saw the way you looked at my things. His words cut like knives, every syllable drenched in prejudice. Angela's chest tightened. She hadn't touched anything except to tidy, hadn't stolen, hadn't broken trust. Yet in that moment, truth didn't matter. His wealth was his weapon, and her silence was her shield. He grabbed his phone, shoving it in her face. Do you know what this is? Proof. I have it all recorded. Her heart sank. Proof of what? A woman working? A mother surviving? But she knew the danger of those words. In his hands, proof could be twisted, reshaped into a story that made her the villain, not the victim. Angela's hands trembled. Her mind flashed to her son. What would happen if she lost this job? If this powerful man decided her fate with a single accusation? The room spun with fear and rage. She wanted to shout, to scream at the injustice of it all. But the words caught in her throat, and then, his voice low, deliberate, one wrong move and your life here is over. Do you understand me? Her knees nearly buckled. This wasn't a test anymore. It was a sentence. Angela stood frozen, her dignity balanced on the edge of his cruelty. In that moment, she realized the truth. She wasn't just fighting for her job. She was fighting for her very humanity. But what would she do next? Angela walked out of that mansion with her head lowered, but her spirit burning. She hadn't stolen anything, hadn't broken trust, yet she left branded by suspicion she could never wash away. For her employer, it was just a game, a cruel test to satisfy his prejudice. But for Angela, it was a wound deeper than humiliation. It was proof that no matter how loyal, no matter how honest, she would always be seen first by the color of her skin, not the content of her character. That night, when she held her son close, she didn't tell him the full truth. How could she? How could she explain that sometimes the world will put you on trial for simply existing? But inside, she carried the weight of that moment, a weight millions before her had carried, and millions still do. Angela's story is not just hers. It echoes through every injustice whispered in silence, every door closed without reason, every accusation born not of fact but of prejudice. It is a reminder that racism isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides behind suspicion, power, and the quiet cruelty of doubt. So the question remains, how many more Angelas must endure this before the world changes? How many more voices must be silenced before people finally listen? Her story calls on us not just to watch, but to act, to speak when others are silent, to see the humanity in those the world tries to diminish. Because if we look away, then we become part of the silence, and silence in the face of injustice is never neutral.